Hello and welcome to ISPE's I Speak podcast, where you can learn about hot topics, news, and trends from experts in the global pharmaceutical manufacturing industry. My name is Barbara Peck, and I'm the manager of community and industry recognition at ISPE. Today, we're inviting you into a conversation with our panel of experts from the Sterile Products Processing Committee. You'll get a glimpse into some of the challenges these professionals have encountered in the current COVID environment. They're here to share some of their experiences and stories in the area of sterile products and how they see the pandemic has impacted their industry. Will this be the new normal, or will it be back to business as usual eventually? Now, we've pulled together a truly global group of panelists. I'll give a quick introduction of our moderators before we pass it over to our panel. Now, today I'm joined by our moderators, Matthew Gordon, VP of Business Development at AST, joining us from the US, and Max Cesarini, Sales Director for Romaco, based in Italy. So Max and Matthew, do you want to introduce our panel?
Thanks again, Barbara, for coordinating this. Thanks again for ISPE for all the wonderful value you bring to the community and in general. You really help elevate a lot of these topics to the right audiences. We've assembled a group of our most active and committed leaders in the community to talk today about COVID and what it's done to our industry, our teams, our supply chains, our capabilities to offer affordable, effective therapies and vaccines to the marketplace on an as-needed basis. I'm joined by another leader of our community, Max is able to help us today, make sure that we have a successful discussion, and will help introduce some of the rest of our panelists.
Hello, guys. Hello, everybody, and super happy to be here. Super happy also to see all these faces here. Unfortunately, for the people only listening to the record, you can't see the face, but I can see everyone is smiling. Therefore, it's not that bad. We surely can make it. So I thanks Matthew and thanks Barbara. I think also pretty honored to see and hear professionals. So therefore, we're all super professionals here, and I think there's lots of things that will come up during this conversation. Pretty interesting, more than just what we hear on the newspaper, but directly on the people working in the field.
All right, so let's start. I'll give a little introduction for the panelists here. So we got the first one, it's Massimiliano Passerini. Actually, I'm the only one here who can pronounce exactly your name. And General Manager at Angelo Antoni Life Science from Italy, of course. Mr. Koji Kawasaki, and President and CEO of the IREX company, joining directly from Japan. Thanks, Koji, for being up so late today. Klaus Huller, Senior Product Manager for Syntegon Technology, joining directly from Germany. That's pretty close. And while from the US, we have our early bird guys, which are Krista Myers. Hello, Krista, Pharmaceutical Market Director at CRB. And then we got Vince Cebular, Senior Vice President, Compliance Services at IPS. Am I missing anyone here, Matthew?
No,
right?
That's perfect.
All right. All right, so I would say that we may start from Krista because firstly, it's a very pleasure to see you here. And it's been a while, we don't see each other, therefore still it's a good thing to see from cameras. And Krista, we got actually, as you know, there's lots of talks around the newspaper and things and about the general supply chain topics concerning to these COVID-19 vaccines. And we know general supply is a huge topic and may argue on all the things, but what has been your experience, what you've seen, what the things that you probably want to highlight on the things that you've seen directly from the inside.
Thanks for the introduction, Max. It's great to be amongst friends to be able to talk about something like this. You know, it's almost a year since the last aseptic conference, and most of us were together. Actually, I was in quarantine from the aseptic conference because I had been in Italy during the first outbreaks of COVID-19 in Italy. You know, it's been an incredible year to see what we've done. One of the biggest topics that has been in the forefront since we started was this supply chain topic. So when we, there were miraculous timelines that occurred between getting the code of the virus identified and sent out to early companies so that they could start developing their therapies. But from that point, these companies had to work on their supply chain to understand how they were going to get the raw materials available, how they were going to manufacture the drug substance, and then how they were going to get the drug substance into either vials or syringes to get us to drug product and then out to the patient. So along that entire chain, there's been things that have happened that have affected the drug supply chain. Early on, some of the governments employed into these types of things. The two biggest things that I see that affected supply chain were partnerships between companies, because many of these companies had not partnered with each other before, but when some of the companies did not necessarily have the facilities or the ability to move something to market, where another company had the right molecule or they had the right formulary to be able to get the vaccine out. And so even from those early days, these companies jumped into supply chain to see what was going on with these types of things. So between the raw materials for things like the lipids and the raw materials for things like the glass vials that the vaccine ends up in, the industry started working through protocols there to be able to move us forward. From the very beginning, in some of the countries, government funds were immediately identified so that we could move the speed of this functionality forward faster than we've ever been able to do before. Vaccines, it's not unusual for vaccines to take 4, 5, 10 years to get to final distribution, and this one we've done in less than a year. It's been nothing short of warp speed. So these days we're starting to see even investments in Europe where government funds are being deployed with manufacturers and with facilities to make sure that there is functionality to protect each country's supply chain so that they can provide vaccines to their population and to protect people and protect the patients. But all along that, there's been a lot of incredible things that have gone on. The partnerships that happened all along that supply chain, I think, were the starting point of how the industry really jumped into this to be able to get to patient population or to get the vaccine to the patient population. Part of what we've talked about in the past few months as the vaccine is being shipped is this cold supply chain. And I know that we're going to get into that with Massimiliano. But that cold supply chain in the United States, we've been doing cold supply chain for a long time, for 30 years. 20 years ago, I was working on a project where we were shipping bulk substance in cryogenic containers, and we've been doing this for a long, long time. So as personalized medicine increased in the United States, most of personalized medicine is done via cold chain. And so even more capacity was planned and developed in the past few years. But that's not necessarily the case around the world. And so we're seeing that the U.S. has had to address the cold chain issues as well. But in many other countries, the cold chain supply may be non-existent. And so significant work has had to happen on those supply chain routes to be able to get to market.
And that's a really good point you bring up, Krista. And you mentioned that we have Mass as well here who can bring some experience on the cold chain. Mass, are you able to speak to some of the challenges that we're seeing in the space? There's been a lot of talk in the news throughout, some of the differences in definitions of cold storage and cryo and such.
Sure. Thank you, Chris and Matthew. Actually, the variety of different processes that were utilized to make these vaccines has a little bit disrupted the cold chain, the typical cold chain that was used to basically one single temperature, which was adequate for any kind of vaccine, including the flu vaccines, the seasonal flu vaccines. So what happened pretty much is the following: the fact that Pfizer with BioNTech and Moderna introduced a new category of vaccine utilizing modified RNA, brought into the scene the utilization of lipids, like Krista already mentioned before. So basically, the RNA was encapsulated in those nanoparticles, these lipids that are the active part, acting inside the body once injected. So the nature of these lipids, typically they are very sensitive to temperature. They are very unstable at room temperature. That brought the necessity to utilize a very low storage temperature of -70 C, which is very unusual for the vaccine industry. So the fact that RNA was utilized by these two companies, it required the utilization of a very low temperature. This is to be kept during the whole transportation of the vaccine, and therefore, in addition to the very end of the manufacturing process, Pfizer had to design a special cool box to make sure that the -70 C was guaranteed during the flight and up to the final hub of the distribution. Actually, Moderna was able to, let's say, to avoid this low temperature, even if the vaccine is based on RNA. So the lipids that were selected by Moderna were able to be more stable, and therefore -20 C is the temperature that is required for Moderna vaccines doses, which makes the life easier for the logistics associated to the distribution and final storage of Moderna. It's worth of mentioning briefly the second category of vaccines that have been developed, which are based on basically modified virus, so viral vectors actually, which already have outside the structure, the viral structure, the spike protein, so they are directly recognized by our immune systems and trigger the immune response, rather than RNA, which basically has instructions to build the spike protein. So this second route, this second category of vaccines has been selected by the British AstraZeneca. Actually is utilized also by the American company Janssen, which is part of J&J, and it has been also selected by an Indian company called the Serum Institute of India, which also partners with another American companies called Novavax. So actually those are the two major category of vaccines that are currently successfully passed phase 3, of course, and they have been approved, of course, in the US by FDA and suddenly by actually MHRA. So the English regulatory body was faster than EMA, faster than the European Medicine Agency, but nowadays pretty much most of the vaccines that we have mentioned have been approved in Europe as well. And so that's pretty much the scenario.
This is really good feedback on some of the challenges with the cold chain, but there are other critical suppliers to the industry that are working to meet the needs of the industry, but have been themselves affected by COVID. We're joined with Koji-san. Are you able to talk about the experience your company has had, Koji, with an active case of COVID and how you were able to keep your business functioning, and some of the lessons learned that we can share with others who are trying to remain active during this time?
Anyhow, last year we had one COVID infection employee. We dispatched employees to many pharmaceutical companies to work in Japan. So two actions were immediately carried out. First, we categorize the contact status of the patient-related person and inform and disclose the analyze the risk evaluation for almost the pharmaceutical company in Japan by email on the website, also speaking to call to our customer. So next action is disinfection of the area of the infected person state was carried out. This infection was sprayed and wiped, and mainly use alcohol, as you know, according to the manual of the public health center in Japan. This infection was done by specialists and by ourselves, because the disinfection companies are also facing shortage of the worker of this infection. This infection work is very dangerous, but it is difficult to explain the completement of the contamination was successfully done. So therefore, we use of the hydrogen peroxide, HCO2, which is ordinarily used in isolator and sterile room decontamination. This HCO2 was applied to the ordinary or normal or general office. At this time, decontamination was carried out to use in the ultrasonic reflection field. It's quite a unique one. And we say its name is the ultradecon. This method is able to finish with very little amount of HCO2 and less corrosion stress. The decontamination strength was measured using EI, enzyme indicator, and we immediately declared the safety of decontamination completement for inside or outside our company, and to inform this result to by email and website. Fortunately, we could close this problem, but now the battle is not to keep. We believe it is one of the good method, even though ordinary room, to use hydrogen peroxide. It will be to point of the ISPE or a long time study of the HCO2 decontamination. I think we believe this method will be possibility to apply to the ordinary room. Anyhow, I would like to know how about your company or country, how to treat this problem. Thank you.
Very good, Koji-san, and thanks for joining and bringing to us your experience in this field and how you apply your knowledge to these problems that I think were pretty much spread all over the world. And it was interesting how you leveraged, of course, on your technical know-how for solving the situation and helping your employees. So now jumping back, we want to make a deep dive on what's the in terms of suppliers. So I mean, machinery manufacturer, as we know, at this point in time, have been also on the spotlight for providing solution, timely manner, and people rushing for retrofits and so on. So I think today we got here on the call Klaus, and therefore Klaus, of course, it's one, as Syntegon is one of the major supplier in the industry for vaccine machinery, filling machineries, and so on. So Klaus, what has been, I mean, the thing that you as a company in Syntegon, you've seen in terms of changing and things that you had to change, or how you adapted to the requirements which came out in the last months, in the last year, I would say.
Yeah, thank you, Max, for the nice introduction, and I'm happy to be part of this podcast here today. So mainly we are facing for new machinery very short delivery time. So we are talking 6 to 9 months, which is in our industry, when you have a normal business, is extremely short, especially for medium and high speed lines. And actually, we are talking about medium and high speed lines when it comes to that vaccine lines. And what we can do here is, on the one hand, that you do a prefabrication and also working in shifts, which we normally do not. And on the other hand, also is that we go more to standard lines. And as you all know, in the industry, all the customers have their special requirements, and we fulfill them. But this also takes some time, especially when you want to serve different customers. And so there you have to agree on more standardized lines, and maybe that you did exactly or nearly exactly in the same way already, so that you can use existing drawings and existing technical documentation. And also, if you talk about several lines, that you have more or less identical lines, and then you can streamline the validation and commissioning at the side of the customer, and also for FAT and so on. So this is when it comes to new machines. And but on the other way, you have existing machines out there, and people want to use them also for these vaccines, and then they are looking for new size parts, so that they can, for example, once the one is in autoclaving and cleaning, so that they have an additional size part for production, or that they have the spare parts ready and so on. So this was a second big part of the business we see driven by the COVID. And for sure, it normally at the moment we are in that business of small batches, flexible lines, and so on. This was more or less a clear focus on till February. And then my point is that it's a little bit hidden now, because we are focusing on the medium and high speed lines, but that will come back. I'm very sure there. But at the moment, these medium and high speed, especially high speed lines, have a new focus. Yeah. So this is the experience we have made so far. And for sure, also we did more field testing. Yeah, so that we, as you may know, to prepare an order or so, normally we do a filling test with a placebo, so that we have the filling properties, the right pump system, the right filling system available. So there we have also seen for sure an increase of these filling tests, because they are then important for designing the right machine. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Klaus. This is a great perspective on some of the challenges that critical infrastructure suppliers are bringing to these projects and schedules. And in that vein, we have one of another expert with us, Vince Cebular of IPS, who has experience in the interface between the regulatory side, facility, project management, and we'd really like to hear from him on what they're seeing in the impact that this pandemic has had on projects and schedules, and some of the critical gaps that the communities come together to face. Vince, please.
Yeah,
that's your
thank
idea.
you, Matthew. Just as a point, myself and Krista are in the engineering and consulting business. So I think one of the big things that we saw is industry itself at the beginning of the pandemic was busy. Between the big pharma companies with their normal activities, the cell and gene therapy, a lot of new projects, that were moving forward, that was putting a demand on the industry. And then when the pandemic hit, we had a short pause, I would say, in March, April, maybe into May. And then from there, everything was fast forward. Existing projects that wanted to make up some lost time, new projects that were kicking off. And then as we talked a little bit about, the government investment, projects proceeding at risk. So we had a whole new slew of what I would say COVID or pandemic related projects. And a lot of those projects where we have normal timelines, a lot of those industry had termed warp speed or government termed warp speed. A lot of those projects wanted to try to trim 3 to 6 months off of their timelines. So it did require a lot of new innovation. Industry has moved towards some modular design, modular skids, design assist, turnkey solutions. So really the industry, we've been trying to react as fast as we can to meet these new speeds without compromising quality. Myself, I'm in the GMP compliance, so heavily involved in the commissioning, qualification, and validation. So looking at how do you shorten those traditional timelines of at the end of the project to a month or two, which has been a challenge. So you try to integrate as much as you can with FATs, and how do we do virtual FATs because the travel limitations. How do we implement, how do we work with vendors to, again, try to deliver quality solutions in the shortest timeline that we possibly can. So Krista, anything you would like to add as well?
You know, I think it's, thanks, Vince. I totally agree with what you said. It's been amazing. I think one of the first things that happened when the shutdowns and the lockdowns started happening is that there was equipment that was ready to be tested so it could be shipped. And back to what we've all been talking about of partnering. So there's been a tremendous amount of partnering going on across the industry. And like Klaus said, there were so many things that were going on that the owner companies now had to partner, where they would normally send their people to FATs. They had to partner with all kinds of different people so that we could run these virtual FATs and get the same amount of integrity with the equipment as if we were all standing there. And so to me, it's shocking how project schedules have changed and shifted, and we've all shifted with them. It's really on, the equipment schedules have changed and shifted, and we're all having to partner together right now to work with our equipment counterparts, and our engineering counterparts, and our construction counterparts, and our commissioning counterparts to make sure the right people are in the right place to be able to keep the project moving forward. To me, it's fantastic, and it's amazing how that now with this new partnering, we've been able to shorten the equipment schedule, the manufacturing schedule, getting the equipment tested and getting the equipment shipped and installed on site so it can be ready for qualifications and to get us into production. And I think there's been so much going on that people have been putting in so much effort to make sure that we can protect society and we can protect the industry to move things forward. It's just amazing how much that's happened. But like you said, there's been one of the things that's obvious about this is that there is a labor issue associated with what we're dealing with. I mean, one of the things that we're seeing is that many companies are spending time doing training of staff because it's not that easy to get the new labor and knowledgeable labor in order to be able to move their products forward. So it will continue to be something that we all look at to see how we can, utilizing groups like ISPE, make sure that the level of training is high for the staffing across the industry.
Yeah, and I would add to that. I think we're seeing really that the pandemic has caused record level unemployments in many countries, but in the pharmaceutical industry, from a technology standpoint, both on the consulting side, whether it's engineers, whether it's life science specialists, as well as our customers, with the project demand, with new companies starting up, with trying to get vaccines to market. I think in my 30 plus years, I haven't seen a labor shortage in our industry that we're seeing now. So it is creating stress. It's creating a lot of demand when individuals to either work overtime or to move things forward. But it is something that I don't think that we've seen as an industry. Us personally, we're trying to hire as many entry-level individuals, entry-level engineers, entry-level biology, chemistry, technical, looking at trade schools, people that have expertise in HVAC and plumbing, things that we may not have done as much. We are definitely looking at how do we expand in the industry. I think our industry overall, that 5 to 10 to 15 years experience, we weren't pulling a lot of people in. And I think that has to change. I think pharmaceutical is getting a lot more attention, and agreeing with Krista, what we can do from a training standpoint through ISP and other things, I think is really value added to our industry.
Vince, thank you for
Go ahead,
Krista.
Isn't it a blessing, or isn't it a great thing though, that the tone of the pharmaceutical industry has changed? So people see the pharmaceutical industry now as one of those groups and one of those groups of companies that we're out to save the world. We're out to save mankind, help them with these types of things. And I think the tone of that has changed so that we can bring the people in straight out of college and show them that this is a purpose in life. You want to be involved in life-saving medicines that help people, this is the place.
Yeah, Krista and Vince, both those topics, the fact that we have the silver lining and the fact that there has been a shift in some of the perspective towards the industry. I remember just a few years ago, we were talking about that perception at the annual meeting, and where pharmaceutical industry ranked in the list of professions. And so that is a silver lining, but there've been some other really wonderful things and innovations that come about it. I remember Max actually was talking about a situation at his previous company where they'd come to innovation to solve a problem leveraging some existing technology. Max, can you maybe take a moment and share with us what your previous company was doing to support it?
Yeah, I think, and also it's actually exactly in line with what was being mentioned by Krista and Vince. So I think it was a good example on how innovation came from partnerships. And this one, it's also another, I think, a great lesson that we learned during this period, so that people pull together from different companies or different environments as well to create something new or that was needed. That's innovation as well, I think. And back then there was, when I was a commissar, there was and we knew there was all these requirement for N95 masks, and therefore we had our VHP technology, and what ended up building up was a decontamination system for masks. And but what we ended up understanding was as well, there we had to partner up with a company which was making reusable masks, because otherwise from a liability perspective those things were just single use, therefore disposable, and therefore it came out that there was a development of this company on a technology of tissue for being reusable masks, together with the decontamination system, ended up what was the most appropriate solution for getting through these things. And I think this one, it's an example, but I mean, I think that also listening to Klaus and the rest of the guys, how to we replied to these new needs in terms of shorter delivery times. I mean, this has meant, I think, a lot of changing in the probably also the mindset, the way of daily doing the things which needed to be on a different planet. Something that, I mean, you know, the 6-9 months that Klaus was mentioning, you know, we all know usually those kind of things have been like 17 months, 18 months, not even like probably like 24 months. Therefore, to cross down to have a further stretching on the delivery time, I think this is an example also how we can innovate, and same for what both Krista and Vince mentioned, as well as what I think also Mass in Angelo Antoni they had to make to ramp up capacity for their product to match the demand. And so I don't know, I'm very, very, very astonished by listening also how this pandemic has drove us through a huge innovation step in different fields.
Well, thank you. It's you know, it's just another example of the groups coming together, offering solutions that we didn't foresee several years ago. So, speaking of, you know, foreseeing the future, what does the group think and feel about the new normal? Are we expecting that this is the new normal? Will there be a return to the way projects were run, travel was performed? Will, you know, virtual FATs be the go for it on all projects? You know, what are we thinking the new normal looks like in 2021?
Ooh, that's a question. So it's amazing, right? So when the attack on the World Trade Center happened in 9/11, I was reading an article that said it took us 6 years to get back to travel and conferences and things the way we had been doing things. So in 2021 and 2022, I don't think we're going to be normal yet. So I think it's going to take a couple more years beyond that. But Matthew, like you said, I think we have set some new paradigms that we're all going to have to grow up into for project delivery. Our clients are expecting faster and faster. You know, they're expecting warp speed on every project.
Yes.
And so I think we're going to be continuing along that path. You know, so CRB is a engineering and construction company, and really we go, you know, from the beginning to the end of a project. And so we're having to change the way we do business to be able to serve our clients better for faster projects, for better cost turnarounds, and for better quality. So it's driving us on the delivery side of the business into a lot of new work.
So Matthew, I fill in. I could think about doing hybrid FATs. So maybe not having a group of 10 people flying over to us and doing FAT, then maybe having 2 persons in charge, and then you do additionally a camera and using your phone and showing your folks at home what is going on. I think because at the moment we are doing it partially completely virtually, and it works. And when I look at LinkedIn and so on, a lot of companies are doing that and have to do that. So I could imagine, I think it's still customers on the long run, they want to have one or people at site talking to the people, touching the machine, having the feeling. But still then they can explain what they see and what they feel to their folks via that new technologies, and it's getting more stable. People are get used to, and I think a lot of people will say it worked in 2020 or in 2021. Why shouldn't we use it and save the money, and maybe also can do some work at home and not being out of the office for 1 or 2 weeks. So I guess this is a good chance that we will see that. But still, I think also people want to meet face to face. So. Yeah. I think we are all leveraging now that we know each other for longer time, for example, and so it's easier to work online. But overall, I think people have a need to see them.
I agree very much, Klaus. It's you know, we've proven virtual can work, but as someone on the sales side, I tell you, FATs often provide my greatest opportunity to expose them to other wonderful options for their future projects. So it's a change.
And it provides great training, being able
Yeah.
to have your hands there and to be able to touch the HMI and to touch the units. It provides great training. And
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things that we're missing out on right now, is to being able to do that.
Well, this is, really important topics. And I want to thank, first and foremost, the people that have come today for all their dedication they've brought to our community, our steering committee. You guys, you can, come month in, month out with great ideas, problems to solve, content for the community. We want to thank ISPE for being a platform for us to work together, to collaborate, to solve these problems as a community. Each and every one of you, it brings a lot to our group, and ISPE makes it all happen. So thanks, everyone. Please, we look forward to seeing your participation in the upcoming Aseptic Conference this March. It will be virtual, but there is some wonderful topics that will expand on some of the things you've heard today, as well as please check the remaining calendar for the 2021 year. There's some wonderful chances for you to get involved and learn more about the challenges you face. Thank you again, everyone.